Monday, September 21st, 2020, special meeting of the Rockland Fire Protection District to order at 7:30 p.m. In attendance, we have myself, Marcel Nowowski, trustee Amy Bernstein, treasurer Carl Snowlin, and others in attendance. We have Yuzin Chang. Did I say that correctly?
Yep.
Okay, great. Just practicing mentally. All right. No one else. And if we I ask everyone to rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. So, I think we just keep public comment on every meeting, right, Carl? Just kind of standard. So, the district trustees allocate time for those individuals who would like the opportunity to address the fire district trustees on any matter not listed on the agenda. Each person addressing the trustees is asked to limit their comments to a maximum of 3 minutes. Would anyone like to take advantage of public comment? I'll take that as a no. Moving on to agenda item number 4. That one's not working, so. I think mine's working. Moving on to agenda number 4. Trustee candidate interview. Mr. Chang.
Yep.
So, yeah, sorry. Like I said, this is going to be informal.
Sure.
We have to follow all this just for open meetings and open meetings that I want to make sure we don't get in trouble.
Awesome.
But yeah, thank you for reaching out to me with a nice little statement here and your resume. From your information, you have been here, what, about a year and a half? Just under 2 years?
Yes.
In the district?
Yes.
So I don't know if there's anything else outside of this that you want to tell us?
Yeah,
Like I said, just to have a conversation here. We had our candidate, Chris Johnson, at the last meeting. He just happened to attend, so I wanted to obviously give you the same opportunity.
Okay.
At least address the board. Like I said, maybe a little bit of Q&A.
Sure.
Go from there. So,
Sure.
So if you want to lead off?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thanks for the time. It's funny we talk about COVID. My family and I, we enjoy traveling, and actually today we're supposed to come back from Italy, but had to cancel that. Last big trip was to Poland, actually, a year and a half ago. But that aside, we moved here from Libertyville, and I was sort of looking for an opportunity to kind of get my feet wet, get involved with the community. And I was looking at my tax bill and noticed that about 10% of what we pay in property taxes goes to the fire protection district. And so when I started researching, I saw the opportunity to maybe be a trustee, get involved, and I thought it would be a good marriage of my technical background. I'm a consultant during the day, able to look at numbers, understand situations, and hopefully bring some value and contribute back to the community. It's sort of the main goal. But I think as I was researching it, obviously there's a lot of history with this board, and the one benefit I think I can bring that might distinguish myself from other candidates is my perhaps lack of affiliation or independence. I think I can evaluate situations with a different lens perhaps than what people who have been here for a long time are used to, and I think that might be one factor that might work to my advantage, just being here for a little less than 2 years and just being a fresh perspective.
Fantastic. So I just have a question. How did you become familiar with the Rockland Fire Protection District? I mean, just through internet research, or how much do you know what has happened in the district in the past 2 years? There's a lot going on. So
yeah, a lot going on, and I have some friends who live in the neighborhood, so I had some background as well to all the stuff that happened over the last 2 years. I did some internet research, so lots of articles out there that provides a lot of details. All of this is new, right? All of this changed. How we've outsourced our fire protection basically to now Lake Forest as well as Libertyville. So I'm aware of all of that, and right now my understanding is, and perhaps you guys can fill the gap here, is this board mainly oversees that responsibility, making sure that taxpayers' monies are being spent appropriately, we're getting good value. I know we're in this long-term contract with this current setup, but it's up for renewal every so often, or there's at least an opportunity to look at options. And I think that's the main, really, responsibility on an ongoing basis. And obviously, this building here is also one other big component that this board manages, and we're trying to just figure out, how this can benefit the taxpayers perhaps, or what's the best way to move forward with all the stuff that's been happening.
Exactly, yeah. Just out of curiosity, Jim's not here, so I can't refer to him about model line or not, but what side of the tracks are you on? Are you north side or south side of the tracks, or do you get service from Libertyville or Lake Forest? You know?
I am actually on the south side of the track,
Okay,
on Basil.
okay. Trying to think if I can answer anything, Carl. I mean, I know you're treasurer, but you've been on this side before. Any questions that, Mr. Chang or?
You certainly seem to have a good grasp of the, of the situation here. I think that's very good. And again, let me also echo, a long-time resident of the neighborhood. Really do appreciate your interest in trying to get involved. It's so, back in the day, it used to be pretty easy to get people to serve and help in various, things, but not so much anymore. So I really thank you so much for that. Really do appreciate that.
Of course.
Is there any, issue about the current state of the district that you are concerned about, or you'd like to see handled, or anything of that sort?
I wouldn't say that there's any particular one thing that jumps out. Generally, we've been very happy here. Taxes are a lot, lower compared to where we came from in Libertyville, so that's definitely one of the reasons why we came here. People are just so welcoming and friendly, like I said at the start. But I think one of my main motive is obviously just to practice taxation with representation, and so I think as I look at this, the responsibilities of the board, I think this is just a great way to uphold that and just get my feedback, so to speak.
Okay. Jamie, do you have anything?
He's already answered the one question I had.
Okay. So you, just out of curiosity, you keep mentioning getting your feet wet. Want to pursue a career in politics?
Well,
so little. I know it's like a little baby step. I know.
I just have one question though,
curious.
I was thinking about it.
Oh yeah.
So were you just looking to just finish off the former trustee's term, or did you want to continue with it once that term is over?
I would love the opportunity to continue, obviously, but I don't want to get my hopes too high up. I don't know. I have some questions too for the board, but my hope is obviously to make this a long-term commitment and hopefully, bring value at the end of the day.
Fantastic. Yeah, because the remainder of the term is only until April, and then there's going to be elections. So.
And the terms are 6-year terms.
It will be a 6-year term. So if you're in it for the long haul.
Sure.
It's great to hear.
Yeah, I'm just taking notes.
But yeah, by all means, take your time. We're not out of time crunch or anything. Like I told you via email, we'll probably be in and out in half an hour.
Okay.
So, trying to get back anything else. If you got questions for us, please, by all means, if you think of anything else, we'll just ask you.
Yeah, so anyway, back to your earlier comment about politics, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
Full transparency. I'm very interested in civic duty in general, but I only recently got my citizenship, which is why I am starting to explore. Actually, went back in the week, I wanted to run for the board of the library, for example, but be citizen. I've been here 15 years now. So after college, I met my wife. Got hired and went through the whole process. So really, this is my first opportunity, really, to get involved with something public, and that's why I have a 10-year gap of not doing anything, and that really explains it. In addition to just me having to study to get my actuarial designation, that takes a lot of time, and 2 young kids. So it's kind of like the perfect storm. And then I saw this, and I was like, oh, the stars are all aligned.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's just.
And historically, with our first election, if you were to run, don't know who else would run against you.
Yeah, that's usually the case. And I know you have young children, so down the road, for example, you might want to consider the Lake Bluff Elementary School District, because
Sure.
Obviously we're in that district. we really, really like it when people from the Millwood community get involved in the Lake Bluff School District, the Lake Bluff Park District,
Yeah, just get representation.
and the Lake
Represent
Forest,
the
the Lake Forest School
community, yes.
District. My wife was on the Lake Forest School District for 8 years, and on Shields Township for 4 years. I was associated with Lake Bluff Elementary, though not in an elected position. I was on the board of the Alliance for Excellence. So, yeah, we really, really like it when people do that. So, you know, it's a, and in general, the way it will work is that most of those elections will be uncontested. They use a caucus system oftentimes to sort of sit down and screen people who want to get involved, and the caucus will pick from the people who come who they will slate basically, and they support them through the election, and generally they run unopposed. Every now and then a contentious issue comes along. Sometimes it will, in schools, for example, you know, sometimes it'll be about taxation, but in general, most of the lower level political activity around here is not. It's all nonpartisan, and it's usually uncontested. So, plenty of opportunity for that.
Sure. I did just have a question. Going back and forth via email, your scheduling, do you have certain things during the week after work, or do you work later hours? What's your scheduling? Because typically the board, I mean, and it can change, it's not set in stone, it just takes a little bit extra legwork to change our regular meeting times. Is 7:30 typically the earliest you can meet, or get together for a meeting? Do you have regular obligations during the week that certain days don't work with others?
Actually, 7:30 is great. The kids go down, typically by 7, and gives me 30 minutes to just freshen up and I'm good to go.
Okay.
So I don't really have anything on an ongoing basis, at least right now, during the weekdays, you know, this might change if there's, I guess there's less activity now so with the kids, right? But at least right now, I don't really have anything that's set or scheduled on
Yeah,
a basis.
typically the meetings, typically the meetings are, we schedule for 6. So
Oh.
like I said, if we can change that.
Oh,
Obviously,
okay.
if you were selected or ran for the election in April, it can change,
Okay.
of course, but I'm just saying right now,
Yeah,
that's just how it's scheduled, so.
and the meetings are once a month, right?
Correct.
The second Monday.
The second.
Yeah,
the
so,
second Monday.
I mean,
And again,
once a month I have to leave for a 6 p.m. meeting, it's not a big
okay,
deal.
just wanna make sure that, you know, if 7:30 is earliest, just, you know, for future reference for us to know, that's no problem.
Yeah,
But if it can be done at 6, we usually, 6 is just, works out pretty good because people from the meeting can come and then it's not too late.
okay, yeah,
We have
like I said,
a
6
little
is,
older population, so it can be usually after 7:30 we leave them for bed. I shouldn't have said that. Past your bedtime, though, isn't it, Carl?
It's always past my bedtime.
Trying to think if I got anything else. This pretty much summed it up. Your willingness to go into this for the long haul, that's very well received, very much appreciated.
well, if I may,
Yeah, by all means, please.
what does this process entail? I know you said you have other candidates as well that you've spoken to. What is your evaluation process, I guess?
So I was gonna bring that up to Jim, because I don't know when Amy and I can meet to make a decision. Probably would have to be another special meeting, because obviously being just the two of us now, outside of having a recorded open meeting, we can't discuss anything, board related. So the way that I envisioned it, there would be another meeting, we talk about, both candidates, and make the selection more than likely at a special meeting. And I don't know if there's any sort of, swearing process or anything like that.
I'm aware of Jim is our attorney.
Yeah, Jim Moore was the attorney.
Let's make sure
He
it's
couldn't be here today because he's got another engagement, but typically he is at the meetings. So I have to check with him if there's anything that we, have to do outside of selecting someone at a meeting.
Okay.
But yeah, I think hopefully that answers your question. I know it's a little bit vague.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. And how would you kind of narrow down the list? I guess I'm curious what you guys are, what qualities you guys are looking for when you compare to candidates, for example, you know?
Well, I mean, backgrounds, willingness obviously to next term, and just, trying to see what different points of view we can bring to, this side of the table.
Sure.
You know, I've lived here for 11 years now when I was on the fire department, so he's been here for a while, was involved with the fire department as well. Carl was, you know, his treasurer now, was on the board previously, so maybe to bring in someone that doesn't have ties to the fire department, or that has not been in the area as long, you know, have any sort of biases, would be a benefit. That's something for us to discuss.
Sure.
Yeah, no really hard criteria that,
Okay.
you know, oh, like, check this box,
Got it.
and so,
Okay.
nothing, like I said, nothing that formal.
Okay. Cool. Thank you.
I think that's all I have. Any other comments? Any other questions for the board?
No, not really. Thank you all for your time.
Yeah.
Well,
So,
I assume that you'll reach out either way.
of course.
Okay.
And like I said, either way, there's gonna be an election in April.
Right. Okay.
So,
Sure.
either you'll be running again or running for the first time, I hope.
Sure.
So either way, I hope to see your name in April.
Okay. Cool.
Yeah, just to kind of recap, you know, board doesn't have to meet once a month. There's a minimum, is there a minimum that we have to meet 3 or 3 or 6 times a year?
I think there is, but realistically, because of the various statutory requirements, there's certain months where you have.
Yes, there's certain months where we have to meet during the
Just to
beginning
get
of.
right, because you have to do the levy in December, you have to do the budget in July, you know, in October, I have to do the statutory reporting. So there's certain things like that that pretty much require.
Yeah, certain months there's pretty much required meetings, other
And
months.
if you go back in history, well, 4 or 5 years ago, the board only met probably about 7 or 8 times a year.
Mhm.
But so much started going on that we really had to meet every
So,
Yes.
so it depends really what's going on, how often the board meets, but if it's hardly ever more than once a month outside, obviously this month, we're probably gonna have 2 special meetings for, the trustee, filling the vacant trustee position.
And you know, we started having to meet every month before the outsourcing really, but it was just, there were, the fire department operational issues as they moved from being paid on call to paid on premise. The fire department was getting more and more complex, and so it just required more meetings for the board and the chiefs to sit down and really make sure everything operationally was going properly, because we were recontracting for ambulance, because Lake Forest was
Facing a lot.
ripping us off. And then also with dispatch, because Lake Forest closed dispatch, and then Highland Park and stuff. So there were just a lot of operational issues that, but not having a fire department to oversee anymore, I can certainly see the need to meet, really now is, it's just, you know, fiscal management.
Pretty much. The only other thing right now that the board has on its regular agenda is the fate of the building. That's pretty much the only big agenda item that's been pretty consistent lately, and the other big move that the board has at the moment. We did have a citizens review committee, hopefully you saw that, you know, reviewing the level of service that we're receiving, both from Libertyville and Lake Forest, kind of comparing them to what was done before to help the board assess, you know, how good of a service we're actually getting. Sure. That's something that still needs to be kind of consolidated, and a report generated for that. So that's a project the board has ongoing. So I'm trying to think of what else to kind of tell you what to expect.
Yep.
We might as well, you know, you're probably aware, but the IDOT is likely to buy this building.
That's what I also.
Yeah.
But they haven't really gave any concrete plans or timeline.
They came close. In fact, I mean, it was scheduled for this year. The money was budgeted to do the acquisition and to do the survey work, and they started that process at the beginning of the year, but then when COVID hit, it just went.
Yep.
And obviously the state's budget is pretty much shot.
Yeah.
So we just don't know what's gonna happen now.
I don't have anything else. Anything else for us?
No.
I'm trying to give you an overview of, our current responsibilities, which you seem to be pretty familiar with. And what other projects that we have right now that are going on that you might not have been familiar with, just the building, recapping the level of service.
Well, what other, just interesting because it is ongoing. The building is currently being leased by the Village of Lake Bluff for COVID use. In a nutshell, it's basically for their police and fire, public safety folks. If they have any kind of failure of protective equipment, they have to automatically go into a 2-day quarantine. And the village manager and the fire chief really felt that the last thing they wanted to do was send somebody home with their family for that. So they asked if, because we've got a kitchen, we've got bunk rooms, all available, if they could lease the building, so that should they have to quarantine their people, they would have that opportunity to come here rather than going home. So they had, as far as we know, they've not had any cases whatsoever.
Been in contact with.
And the lease being an intergovernmental agreement was basically, they're just paying the utilities and the expenses on the building. I mean, we're not trying to charge them, rent exactly, just, they're keeping us
Cover
whole.
what you use, yeah.
So, but that can terminate pretty much at any time.
Once the pandemic is declared over, I'm sure they'll say, okay, we're done, let's settle up. But yeah, they've had no use for the building, thankfully, no use, in Lake Bluff. But yeah, they still do regular maintenance as far as, sanitizing,
Come
the
in,
building.
sanitize, they mow the lawn.
Yeah. Be nice.
Just another, you may pick this up too, but most of the firefighters who are in the Norwood Fire Department are now on the Lake Bluff Fire Department.
Okay.
So we have a kind of an interesting relationship with them.
Yeah, that was a bit curious, I guess. I don't want to get ahead of myself, but I was wondering why we didn't just outsource it to Lake Bluff. I saw an agenda out there, it was maybe considered, but maybe I didn't look or read close enough at some of the historical minutes, but that was
Lake Bluff did
fine since you did comment.
absolutely made an offer.
Yeah, that's what I saw.
Certain members of the board,
Previous members of the board.
previous members of the board,
Previous appointed members.
appointed members, of which I was one, but not, I was very, very willing to take a look at Lake Bluff, but a couple of the other ones, for political reasons, and personal reasons, refused to
entertain Lake Bluff's offer.
entertain my offer.
But yeah, you're correct, there was an offer made by Lake Bluff, that's pretty much where it's at.
And it would have been different in that it would have been a joint venture, where we would still have an operating fire department that worked, the way we saw it was basically a single virtual department made up of 2 physical departments working together as a virtual entity, a single virtual entity. So calls, the whole coverage area would be handled by both and shared. And the chiefs were more than happy to, work that out and make that work. And Lake Bluff was also, they were much later in their transition from being a paid-on-call to a paid-on-premise. And they could no longer service their town on a paid-on-call basis, and they knew it.
Are you familiar with the difference?
No, actually.
Want me to?
Yeah.
Okay, so paid on call, typically a station isn't staffed. Firefighters aren't paid to be in the station, they're paid on per call basis. So a call goes out, phones go out, everyone's got a pager. Who responds to the call
and they get paid $5. I mean,
It was never about the money, Carl.
No, that's important to understand, these are volunteer fire departments,
Yeah.
unlike Libertyville and unlike Lake Forest, which are career fire departments. Lake Bluff, even though it's a municipal fire department, is a volunteer fire department, as was ours. And that's the old school model, because all of the firefighters, for the most part, lived in the community and had jobs like at the hardware store, the gas station,
Right.
and the tone would go out and they'd shoot over to the station, and that worked. But Lake Bluff isn't that kind of community anymore. It hasn't been for years.
Right.
Most of their firefighters don't work anywhere near here. And that was true here. So we had transitioned here to paid on permits where, again, still strictly volunteer, but now we pay, we would always have a minimum of 3 people, ultimately 7 by 24, in the station, and we would pay them $85 for a 12-hour shift. Again, the pay it's not about the pay, they're volunteers. And the reason they're here, for the most part, is that many of them are career firefighters on other departments. And we were well known for our training, that they could be a lieutenant here and learning how to be a lieutenant in their career job, where they're just a basic firefighter. That was a big part. So we had a lot of people who were career firefighters or wish to become career firefighters. And the Nolan Fire Department has a very, very rich history of impeccable training. I mean, this is what they call a full ALS department, where Lake Bluff was not. Advanced life support, which means they're, all of the engines have all the life-saving equipment on them, and all of the paramedics and EMTs, all on each vehicle. So that was, that's kind of where we were at. And Lake Bluff was still doing paid on call, and we were covering a lot of their calls. But the offer that they were making us was really to come together and join. Because they're municipal and because we're a fire protection district, you don't legally become a single entity, but you can operate virtually like a single entity. But the choice was made instead by the board to contract out.
Definitely very interesting history.
Another thing I just wanted to note also a history of placing, our volunteers into career departments all over the country.
Yes. Yeah, they were very well known and well respected fire department. Some of the justification was, well, volunteer fire departments can't service nearly as good as professional fire departments. In the P&C insurance industry, that's the ISO ratings, and Knollwood had an ISO rating for many years better than Lake Forest. Lake Forest finally achieved one equal to Knollwood. So to say about the professionalism of your department, it's kind of I think that Knollwood proved that you could absolutely in this day and age run a very high quality professional fire department. And unlike you guys who have actually kind of grew up in the fire department, I didn't, so I'm not biased. I moved to the community like you and got to learn these things. So I was never a firefighter, but I had tremendous respect for that fire department.
Awesome.
All right.
I don't have any more questions.
All right. Then with that, I'll go ahead and make a motion to adjourn at 7:59 p.m.
Second.
And all those in favor say aye.